The Menace Tech Show.
Welcome to the Menace Tech Show, a show for HVAC professionals by HVAC professionals.
I like how you guys bounce back and forth between heat pump talk and food talk.
The Menace Tech Show.
Mitsubishi.
So my wife has been social media influenced quite a bit. So I'd say half the stuff that shows up on our front doorstep comes from TikTok or Instagram or whatever. But, you know, she makes more money than I do, so she can do whatever she wants. But yeah. So this is the S&B umami topping. And so it's crunchy garlic with chili oil. And it actually has like sliced individual like crunchy garlic, and it's phenomenal. And literally we bought a whole extra pack of little spoons from Amazon just to like, so my kids quit stealing it and taking spoons up to their room. Or, I mean, I'm raising 5 monsters, but yeah, it's completely, it's awesome.
So other than eating it out of a jar, what else do you put it on?
So we buy a ton of Costco makes this or doesn't make, but they sell this bucket of like tonkatsu fancy ramen.
Yeah.
And so we go through a ton of that because my kids love that. And it goes on that. It goes on like the stir fried noodles that, you know, I make out on the Weber Slate, throwback to a different episode. But my wife, her favorite snack right now is a soft boiled egg. So boiling water, drop the eggs in for 8 minutes, 30 seconds, no more, no less. And then when you pull them out, you run them under cold water, peel them in the sink, and they're still, the yellows are a little bit runny.
Yep.
Cut them in half, and then you spoon a little bit on, and it's phenomenal.
Yeah. No, that stuff is delicious. Bryn and I and Juan were just in Vegas last week. Was it last week, Bryn?
Yes.
Yeah. And there was a sushi place in the hotel, and we ordered edamame, and they put this crunchy chili garlic oil right on it. And usually when you get edamame as an appetizer, it's just steamed, and they got a little bit of salt on it, and that's it. But this stuff, wow, what a game. It was so good that Juan asked for another bowl of it because he was putting all his other food in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm a fan of this stuff. And garlic is good for you. Garlic is nature's antibiotic, so it's good for you.
Nice.
Yeah. Yep, it is good. Yeah, there was on the edamame, and then he was dipping his sushi in it, and then I feel like he had another thing too.
He did.
But he was dipping everything in it, and
He
it was
put
hilarious.
it in his rice. He had white rice, and he put that in there.
That was it. You can't taste anything else. He just was coating everything with that chili garlic oil. But I recently discovered it too. I was actually at a it was like a festival, brew fest kind of thing that was up at Mount Wachusett, and they had a bunch of vendors, and one of the vendors, he makes his own, so he's local. And I was tasting it, and it was funny because one of the ones that he had, it tasted really good. And I'm looking at the label on his jar, and I said, this kind of looks like Indonesian more than like Asian, more Eastern Asian. And he's like, yeah, my wife is Indonesian. She came up with the recipes, and that's, so we jar it and sell it now. And so we bought a jar, and it's already gone. So we use it for just about everything. I'll put it in pasta dishes. I'll put it on, you know, the more Asian inspired food, but the stuff is so good.
That's what happened when I started cooking with chili oil. I bought a jar and it was gone. And then I bought another one, and then finally my wife and I bought like 5 jars because we were going through it so quick. So I think I'm going to take a lesson from Ed. When I buy this stuff, I'm just going to get a half a dozen jars and just every week. You know.
It's absolutely worth it.
Yeah. Well, you, Steve.
So I got I brought up a list of like ramen toppings, kind of, because I want to. When you say crunchy chili oil, I think of Newport Boru noodle. That's one of their toppings. And I'm a big Jinya fan, so Jinya, they're all about the toppings. and fried onions is one of my go-tos. Sapporo, which is like a ground pork, is another topping that I love to put on there. Paul, what are some toppings that you like to get on your ramen?
I just had one in Vegas. It was a braised short rib instead of the pork belly. It was short rib. That was really good. I've seen some with corn. I love corn, but it's okay. I just don't think it belongs in a ramen for some reason. But the bean sprouts, it's the only way you're going to get me to put bean sprouts in my mouth is if they're in a bowl of ramen. Otherwise, don't even look at me with it. The same thing with bok choy.
Yeah.
When I've made my own ramen, I put bok choy in it, and the bean sprouts, and of course the seaweed. My kid. This is a funny little sidebar here, but my kid buys a little package of seaweed, the little squares. They're really light.
Oh yeah.
He opened it up. He's driving down the street. He opened it up. It's nice. So he rolls down his window. And all the seaweed goes flying out the window. It's just these thin little wafers of seaweed, dried seaweed.
That's how to do it.
Yep.
Yeah, for proteins, soft-boiled egg, chashu pork, spam, believe it or not, is on the list.
No.
I don't know if that's the spam that we're used to, but...
yeah, it is. I don't like spam.
Rotisserie chicken, tofu, shrimp, fish cakes. Don't like the fish cakes. I don't know. That's something they throw in a lot of ramens, but I always make sure if I'm in a new ramen place, hold the fish cakes, please.
Yeah.
Is anyone going to get this reference if I say you should try the ramen with seaweed spam, and spam instead of the ramen with spam, and spam?
Yes, yeah, that guy that makes Monty Python jokes.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
So.
Spam. No.
I sadly, my education stopped at Monty Python and the Holy Grail, but
Good movie.
Yeah.
Funny.
What about you, Rob? What do you like for toppings on your ramen?
I mean, I'm pretty easygoing with it. I do like putting spicy pork on mine. Bean sprouts. The seasoned egg is always good on there. And love to have it spicy.
Nice.
And Bryn and Rob are in Atlanta. Everybody else is remote. Ed is in his home office. Steve's in his office in Boston, in my office. But the unwritten rule is that when somebody travels to Atlanta on Monday, we go to Noodles for lunch.
Yes.
And Bryn became the first person to violate that rule and not go to Noodles yesterday.
Yeah, I know. I dropped the ball.
Yeah.
Usually that's like a you and Steve thing. And I don't know. We had some freedom, and I figured I wasn't in the mood for noodles. Rob, as you can tell, is not one to make waves, so we went where I wanted to go.
I whined and
where did
cried,
you
but
go? Now I have to know.
We went to Moro's. But I went to La Viuda Negra last night. That was very good.
Yes. That's the best Mexican food. I'm willing to bet you it's the best Mexican food in the state of Georgia.
I don't. That's a. I don't know.
Have you been there?
That may be a bridge too far.
Have you been there, Ed?
I haven't, but man, the competition is pretty significant.
Oh, you go there, and then let me know.
All right, I can do it.
On
And
that note,
if there's a place you like better, I need to know what that is.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. What's the spot then?
Oh, I mean, picking a favorite Mexican spot in Atlanta is kind of like picking your favorite child. I mean, for other people, I have a favorite, but you know.
Yeah, everybody, listen. I don't care if you admit it. If you got more than one kid, I don't care who you are. Admit it. You got a favorite.
I mean, it depends on the day, but
yes, exactly, and that is absolutely true.
No, I mean, there's so many okay, and there's different kinds of Mexican food in Atlanta. There's also it's not anyway. There's so many different. Sorry, I'm getting excited about food. It is noon, literally.
That's why we have you on here.
So my wife and I just went to Papacitos, which is close to the Brave Stadium. It is unbelievable. It's the only Pappasitos outside of Texas in the entire country. All the other Pappasitos are in Texas. And it's kind of high dollar dress up fancy Mexican food. But it's tremendous. It's across the street from the Brave Stadium. There's No Moss. There's Serenita by my kid's dance studio, and they're only open for lunch, and they're in a BP, but they're like award-winning taco. Anyway, I don't know.
You have to try that, Paul.
Yeah,
Oh.
Which Braves stadium? Because the Braves build a new stadium like every 10 years.
Well, I mean, it's they renamed it, but it's been the same stadium since they moved to the current place, Truist.
Yeah.
And right at 75 and 285. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, the other one, the one I've been to was the last place they played, Turner Field.
Yeah.
That's the last game I went to was there.
Yeah. I recommend. There's so many good restaurants around Truist now. But yeah, it's tremendous.
All right. Well, Ed, if you're joining us, and we're always happy to have you on here, but if you're joining us, that must mean that we're going to be talking about controls.
Outstanding.
So, Bryn, what are we going to talk about today?
So originally, this was pre-Ed's invitation. I was thinking we could kind of talk about the new AE-400 and maybe what is new compared to the AE-200. I know they're already starting to be installed and have been for a little while, correct, Ed?
Yeah, they're on the market now.
Yeah, so for those who maybe installed one and realized, wow, there's a lot of different things like, new setting tool software, new setup for, expansion versus primary controls, that kind of stuff. So I was going to do some comparing and contrasting, and then Steve had the great idea of why don't we have Ed, the expert, on so that we can get a little bit deeper dive. And so now it's totally up to Ed what we talk about with the central controller.
Outstanding. So, this is my flavor of mental illness, my neurospicy tendency to talk about controls wherever I'm at. So, the new AE-C400 EWC50 have come out, and the good news for the people who have been installing the AE-200 for years and years and years, or TE-200, depending on where you get your controls from, is that this is a logical extension of everything that you've already learned and already done. So there are definitely some new things to know, but if you're already familiar with and comfortable with those other controllers, it's going to be a pretty easy transition, and I think you're going to like a lot of the improvements. So one of the things that has changed is we used to have this weird nomenclature of the AE-200 was always a master, the AE-50 was always an expansion, and the EW-50 could be a standalone master that was never allowed to be expanded, but usually it was an expansion, and you've got to, I before E and carry the one, and then when you get to licensing, it's really complicated. And don't even start on energy apportionment, right? We've got to add another master central controller, and then you get 4 expansions, and everyone gets sideways talking about that. And we have significantly simplified adding central controllers to systems. Now, the master controller is whichever one you select in the software. It can be an EWC50. It can be an AE-C400. It doesn't matter. It's just the one that gets the checkbox. That's the master. So order whichever one you need. And the good news is that if you've got a BMS on your system, right, you're doing a lot of central controllers, you can just select the EWC50 if you don't need to have a touch screen, and you're actually going to save a lot of money because the EWC50 is significantly less expensive than the AE-C400. It's essentially the exact same controller. It's just one has a touch screen, the other one doesn't. And so the whole, do I need a master? Do I need that kind of goes away. It's how many do you need, and then pick the one that you want. Whether it's touchscreen yes, touchscreen no, and you're good to go.
So even if I were to get only EWC50s, I can still have the 400 indoor units.
Exactly.
It's just a matter of how many expansions I add to that.
That's exactly right. And again, you can pick whatever you want for an expansion. So you can do all AE-C400s, and if you want touchscreens everywhere, you can do that. And it's no longer a complicated application.
And just because I get easily confused, the AEC 400 can have 400 indoor units, but do I still need 50? Every 50 indoor units, I need another EWC 50?
That's exactly right. So it's
okay,
the
just wanted to make sure.
Addressing, the same MNet rules that we know and love. It's exactly the same. So 50 directly connected to the MNet, and you get the 400 on the touchscreen by adding 7 more central controllers, so whatever flavor you want, right?
All right, beautiful.
So, the dimensions on the controllers are pretty similar. So the AE-C400 can actually go into the same slot that you've cut out for an AE-200 previously. There's a new accessory that lets you rip and replace if you have to do that. The EWC50 is a little bit of a different form factor. It's actually much taller controller. So it's a little bit wider, and then it's much, much longer, but it's a shallower controller. And then one of the other improvements is that that actually now, instead of having to screw the whole controller to the perf panel, it actually has like a frame. So you literally install the frame in the perf panel, and then you just hang the controller, and it attaches with 2 screws at the bottom. So, it's a much nicer experience to use the controllers also, because it goes from that kind of polyester sheet, the weird plasticky touchscreen. Now it feels like a modern experience. It's a full glass touchscreen. And one of the kind of the neat things is that the touchscreen display is now exactly the same as what you see when you log into ICCW. So with the AE-200, it was a completely different experience. The web pages were nice, but the touchscreen kind of it didn't look and feel the same. And now it's exactly the same. You do one, you do the other, and you're good to go.
You know what's funny about that is I actually had a conversation when I teach and I talk about the central controller, and I am introducing, soft launching for a while now, the AE-400, and I talk about how it's a full glass touchscreen as opposed to that, it's a small like vinyl layer over the actual touchscreen portion. And I talked to some of the younger guys about, how like phones used to be like that and old touchscreens, and they're like, no, I have no experience with that at all. And it's aging myself now to realize, like, yeah, my experience with touchscreens are not the same as, a younger contractor. So they only know the glass. So I think it's going to be nice to have familiarity right out of the box.
Yeah, it's a much nicer experience. Talking about the other improvements, the AE-C400 lets you do the A2L equipment. So right now, if you have the new X-Gen City Multi equipment, you've got to have the AE-C400 or EWC50 to connect to that equipment. One of the reasons is they've added an I/O port on the back of the AE-C400, or next to the port on the EWC50, where there's actually a contact that you can wire a refrigerant alarm to. So, CN5, which is a connector that allows you to do peak cut or, emergency stop. Yeah, so CN5 is still there, still has all those functions. You configure it in the initial settings tool the same way you've always done. But now we've got CN6 for the refrigerant alarm, and that is going to allow you to add an external alarm buzzer. Now, I'll say that the alarm on the central controller, when you get a 4-digit refrigerant error code, is actually louder than the alarm that you get from like a PAR 42 or PAR 43. It is horrifyingly loud, especially if, let's say, you work in an open office and are testing this at your desk with a sim kit, and literally everyone pops up above the cube walls like a gopher, but it's like, miles of cubes and everyone's looking at you and you can't get it to shut off but until you throw the power because you panicked. I'm just saying.
Hypothetically, you mean?
Yeah. So
So the way that works would be, let's say, any indoor unit that is being monitored by the AE-C400, if it were to get a sensor error or a leak, it would provide an output on CN6. Is that how that's working?
to the best of my knowledge, yes.
Okay.
So anything on that refrigerant circuit, I'm not sure if it's anything up to the 400 controllers, but I would assume that is the case. I haven't tested that yet, but yeah, it is alarmingly loud, and you can use it to wire an external input. Do need 12 or 24 volts DC.
Is that a feature that I can turn off and opt not to use that alarm?
Believe you can. I actually don't know the answer to that.
Okay, that's fine. Make one up. Nobody will know the difference.
So you can say not available on the buzzer for the initial settings tool, but I'm not sure if that turns off the alarm or if it turns off the CN6.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So I'll need to go back and do some more research on that. We also have a new watt-hour meter connection. So this is not for energy apportionment, but if you've got some equipment that you just want to measure the consumption of, you can actually directly connect to a new Modbus port up to 4 power meters. And so you've got the Mitsubishi Electric EMU4. We've got some ABB, Schneider Electric, some other options. And we're hopefully going to expand this list soon, since it allows you to just configure it, connect it, and you're done. So you don't need to program in the Modbus registers or the function codes or the holding coil, like none of the messy, detailed stuff. It's literally give it an address, a baud rate, and you're ready to rock and roll.
Wow.
So the only data that comes through, to be clear, is kWh. So you don't get to see the line-to-line voltage or power factor, some of the stuff you'd expect to see from a power meter. But all that stuff is still in the meter. But what the data is displayed on the central controller is the kWh values.
Okay.
So with the new AE-C400, we can go up to 8 central controllers in a single system, with one of them being the master. And what that means is that any of those controllers that have a touchscreen can actually see and mirror all of the other ones. So the AE50 couldn't do that, and it could only display on its screen what it was connected to. But now any of your controllers can see any of the other equipment. So that's a nice improvement if you've got a failure or you just want to have multiple places to control.
So Ed, let me just make sure I understand that. So if I have 8 AE-C400s and one of them, unit number 1, is the master, right? And I've got this throughout a building or whatever, I can look at any of those 8 and still see all 400 units?
On the touch screen, yes.
Wow. Okay.
So
that's different.
You can mirror everything. You can see everything across those 8. And when you get to the ICCW or the web page feature, you can actually see up to 40 central controllers. So
I saw that. That's pretty cool.
Like in our Swanee office, I've got 6 tied together right now. And then, on our same network, I could add the Dallas office in, the New York City office in. I could add everything all together. So one of the important service questions is, can I mix and match the AE200s with the C generation, the AE-C400, EWC50? And the answer, unfortunately, is no. So if one goes bad, you need to replace it with a service part, like for like. But the other option is that if it's, let's say, an expansion that goes bad, you can just remove that expansion from the AE200 and have it as its own separate AE-C400 version, right? So you'd have one login for the old system, one login for the new system, which is not ideal, but it absolutely will operate correctly that way. So anyway, so
on that topic, because typically let's say you have AE200 and a couple expansions, and you have an EW50 go bad or whatever the case may be, lightning hits it, and you decide, okay, rather than putting it on an AE-C400 or what if I just want to upgrade everything, do an AE-C400 and then a couple EWC50s? Are you able to, because we program most of these things through initial settings tool, are you able to take the file that existed? Let's say you saved the initial settings tool file from the previous generation. Are you able to apply that to new, or are you going to have to rebuild through the new initial settings tool?
Unfortunately, the answer right now is that you've got to rebuild.
Okay.
But hopefully having that initial settings tool already will make it a faster process.
Yeah.
And that's one of the improvements that we've asked the factory to add, is the ability to read and update old files. That's a big focus of our development requests overall. So we're looking for as many ways to automate that process as possible in the future. So for those of you who are familiar with Mitsubishi Pro, M-Pro, we're hoping to be able to tie that into the central controllers, into Kinza Cloud. And the more that we can connect those different pieces, it flows through the life cycle of a project. So you've got design, commissioning, startup, installation, but also hopefully once all of that's there and connected to the cloud, eventually warranty will be able to happen automatically and service will be able to happen in the cloud. So we're pushing forwards as hard as we can on that sort of topic. But unfortunately, the answer for now is that you've got to build from your old file.
Okay. It's easy enough though.
So the icons have changed. So one of the things that they've added is filter buttons. So now you would have everything on your floor plan. You can filter by the appropriate model. And they have also added outdoor unit as a displayable function. So we can actually have a floor plan that shows the outdoor units. And so I've got, this PowerPoint, but I can actually pull up our Swanee office and give you the tour rather than go through this crap.
Yeah, that's an awesome feature. When I'm showing the initial settings tool to contractors in class, it's one of the things that always blows their mind, because when I talk to them, I say, how many of you have seen a central controller before? And they almost all raise their hand. And I say, have you ever seen it with the floor plan uploaded, with the units actually mapped out per floor? And it's almost always blank looks. And so when I show them the capability for us to do that with the indoor units, they get excited, because you get a large system and you're like, well, yeah, okay, address 4 has a drain fault, but I don't know where address 4 is in this, 5-story building. Well, when you show that you can actually upload the floor plan images and map out those units, it starts to excite people. And some of them are like, I want to rebuild one and do it at this job site that we have because we've got so many units. So to be able to do that for the outdoor unit now is even better, because you can imagine there's rooftops that's got 8, 9 different systems on it. So to be able to actually isolate those two would be awesome.
Awesome. I want to show kind of a live demo here in just a minute, but I want to run through a couple of service and tech related things first, because this is a tech focused podcast. So one of the big differences between the AE200 and the new C generation of controllers is that the default username and passwords that we've been used to for 1,000 years have changed. So it was always initial init, administrator admin. Now we have to have something called a DP, which I think stands for digital PIN number or something like that. But basically, anytime we use the term DP, that just means the serial number. And so the password is still initial, or excuse me, the username is still initial or administrator, but the default password is going to be capital I init, INIT, and then the serial number. So you can find that there's a sticker that comes on the manual in the box, but the serial number is also on the controller itself. And then I'm going to show you in just a second where you can actually find it on ICCW. So you can always get to it, provided you haven't changed it. But that is a big change. And you also need to have that for the initial settings tool. You need to have that for the software update, things like that. So when you log into ICCW, there's a link that says Show Product INF Information. And if you click that, it actually will give you a pop-up that will show you the model name, the software version, and the serial number. So, awesome. This example right here is 45125.212. Take the dash out, and that's your DP number. So you can always figure it out. Just make sure if you get a bunch of central controllers that you're keeping track. Another pretty significant change is the secure communication. So unlike the TE200, which actually we had to replace on our corporate network because we failed our own internal security audit, the new controllers are not only capable, they require a secure connection. And so there is a certificate that is actually embedded in the controller. So you can download it from the controller. That allows that connection. And so you know that it's not working if you go to the web page and it gives you a security warning, not secure connection, can't be verified. So that's kind of a red flag saying that you need to install it. So there's two methods to install the certificate. There's a batch file that comes with the software when you install it from Mitsubishi Pro. But if you're on a corporate network or corporate PC, it probably won't let you run the batch file. And so you can actually download the certificate from the central controller itself by going to the web address. So the default is 192.168.1.1/cacert.sir, which is just the file name of that. And so it's actually on all of the central controllers. So the good news is you only ever have to do this one time for the computer that you're using, and then it's valid until 2060 or something like that. So there's better instructions, more detailed instructions in the manual in MPro, but basically you go to the IP address /cacert.sir and it will download that file. And then what you're going to do is you're actually going to right click on it. And instead of opening it, you're going to install it. You can choose current user or local machine, doesn't matter. And then instead of the default, so you don't want to let it automatically select, but you choose the Trusted Root Certification Authorities. Okay. And once you've done that one time, you never have to touch it again. It'll be valid for any central controller that you touch of this generation forever. So along with that, once you've done that, you also need to make sure that your functions that you're looking for are in a different location than what we're used to with the TE200. So they're underneath the maintenance menu, but everything is still there. And the username is that initial, the password is capital I, init, and then you add your DP. You got a question or?
Well, I was gonna say, I'm trying to think now. I know that another way to find at least the IP address, and now I got to test it because I'm not 100% anymore. Is through maintenance tool. If you look at the connecting information of a central controller, it will actually display the IP address, and I'm wondering now if the serial number shows up. I've got to test that because that might be another way to find it too. But I don't remember off the top.
I think it did on the AE-200.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know about the new one, but
So when you connect with maintenance tool now using the IP connection, and so you run maintenance tool as an administrator, and it allows you to select the IP connection for your central controller. And so you can actually get in without having to have your MN converter, which is a nice feature.
Yeah.
Another thing to add is technicians, I want you to change the target line of the icon, the shortcut that opens the initial settings tool. And so what this does is it actually will enable a hidden menu that shows you the outdoor unit, the COP, the instant power consumption, and the total power consumption. So by changing the target line, so you right click on that icon instead of clicking to open it, open file location on the start menu, go to properties, and then you add a space, has to be space, you can't just go straight with the slash, but it's space / measure OC. That's a capital M, capital OC. And what that will do is it will open a hidden third tab on the initial settings tool that allows you to see the outdoor unit measurement settings. So you can turn it on, set it to available, and then you'll be able to see on the touchscreen the outdoor unit temp as measured by the TH7.
Wow.
It'll show you the total electrical energy consumption, so the kWh. It'll show you the instantaneous power, right? So how much is it drawing right now? And then it'll show you the COP.
That's awesome.
Wow. You know, a thought just occurred to me, Bryn, but we need to put an e-learning together for this.
Yeah.
Because this is an audio podcast. Of the 12 people that listen to us, only 3 of them actually watch on YouTube.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
we still put it on there as a reference, but yes. Yeah.
So,
no, but I think doing an e-learning for this whole thing, for some of these initial settings, these startup things, I think a little 5-6 minute video, I think would go a long way to putting it up there for everybody who needs it. Then you're out, contractor's out doing this. He doesn't have to go back and listen to everything. He can actually go watch the video.
So I've done a couple of screen cap videos.
Perfect.
And so I'll share them with you guys, and I shared a bunch of them recently with Lowell, and he's like, "Why do I have this?" I'm like,
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, if I can get my hands on them, we can definitely build some content around that, because it is always nice to have this stuff shortcutted. When you're going through this whole process, there's a lot of steps. There really are, and I think that having some visuals to aid a successful startup of this thing is important. So,
and we'll fast track this. We should have it ready within 6 months, I think, if we fast track it.
So I already published some of the videos to my own YouTube channel.
Oh, look at that.
So just
is this shameless plug it?
A hidden link. It's just my personal. I mean, it's not. I'm not trying to monetize it or brand it or anything. I'm just like, here's how you do it. Another thing that's different with the new central controller is that you can enable maintenance tool data collection in the central controller itself. So by logging into the maintenance menu, instead of using initial init with the DP, you use the username remote monitor and then remote DP with a capital R. What that lets you do is you get a totally different maintenance menu, and then you can actually change the operation data acquisition mode. So by default, it's off, but you should turn it on in every central controller you touch, because it's just a passive recording. And so you can download all the data in a CSV file like that and instantaneously have a good view of whatever you're trying to look at.
Yeah.
So
I
you can
hammer
do
this
it like
one
this
off
is
as well.
this is a latest value. So this is just a snapshot. What's the last value on that unit, right? So here's an outdoor unit in the Swanee office, but I can also do a specified range. And so I get a reading every minute or every 2 minutes, depending on how it's set up, download the CSV output, and now I've got it in Excel. And so I can compare, I can do analysis. So specified time, if I want to go, what happened at 8:02 a.m., I can go look at that. But it's a really powerful tool.
Yeah, I talk about that one a lot as well because it is incredibly useful. Now, the one caveat, and unless things have changed, the only way to get onto your ICCW is you still have to be on the same network. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So this isn't something like a cloud-based. We still need to be on the same network to get on there. But it sounds like what you're saying is that if you enable it, you could potentially show up to maybe a service call and you could go into that portion, as long as you're on the network, get onto that portion of ICCW and record what has been happening.
Yes.
Is
And
that
I
correct?
believe it goes back 62 days.
Yeah, see, that's awesome because think about it from a technician standpoint. If they didn't have maintenance tool already hooked up to the equipment, how are they supposed to see what happened when the error went, right? So now as long as they can get on the network, ICCW can potentially save a lot of that information as long as you configure it that way. So I think that's huge.
Yeah. Adding graphics to the new Citra controllers is also much easier. It used to be very persnickety about the size. It had to be exactly 1890 by 900, and then kind of each tile was 630 by 450, and I saw almost no installations in the wild where somebody added graphics. It's much easier now. We've got a much bigger range of file sizes. So we can go all the way up to 3840 by 2160. And it can be not just a GIF, but a JPEG. It can be a PNG file. So it's much more flexible to get graphics installed. Yeah.
And for the layman listening, most images that you would download from, say, Google are not a .gif file. They're typically going to be JPEG or PNG. So, even if you get access to, Scott Tallman, he used to always say, get the fire escape plans, because that's a good floor plan typically. But even if somebody has a digital copy, it's most likely going to be some other form like JPEG or PNG. Now the central controller will accept that, whereas before we would have to convert it to a .gif before we could upload it. So
it was a pain in the butt that nobody driving a installation service truck had time for.
Yeah,
but now it's much, much easier.
I want to touch on something that has always been a pain for me, and for any technicians out there that are not too savvy with computers to begin with. Has this gotten any easier with initial settings tool, logging and sending information to the central controller through initial settings? So in other words, I'm in initial settings tool. Does my computer that I'm using with a LAN cable need to have an IP address assigned to it, or do I need to, in other words, I don't know if I'm using the right terminology, have a static IP address? Or does it do it automatically? Has it gotten easier?
No.
It hasn't. Okay,
so it's the same process. So you've got to have a static IP. So that part hasn't changed because it's still sitting on a network. Kinza Cloud, when we're configuring Kinza Cloud, we're not actually connecting to that gateway. We're connecting to the servers. So that's easier because you can just open a web browser with internet connection and you're ready to rock and roll.
Because it was always like the question of, do I choose AE-200 with MNet, without MNet, charge all those different options on the left, and if you picked the wrong one, you couldn't get in, and it was just, I had to call Rick Powell, and it was messy. So I didn't know if anything is easier now. But I guess, network is a network, and the rules are the same.
Yeah, so let me do this. So this is the new AE-C400 initial settings tool. And so one of the things that you'll see immediately that's different is that there's no left column of masters, there's no right column of expansions, there's no which flavor of MNET, no MNET, with apportionment, without. It's literally, is it a touch screen or is it a not touch screen? Right? And so we've got 40 central controllers. So if I go and I add, let's say 9 central controllers real fast. Right? And I'll give these all IP addresses so they don't bark at me. Oh, come on. This is exciting audio.
I'm gonna say, for those of you just listening, we've got on the screen the initial settings tool for the central controller, just going over the updates to the software. So if you're actually looking to configure an AE-400, just be aware that it is a different software than the previous initial settings tool, but can be downloaded using Mitsubishi Pro. Navigate to the AE-C400, scroll to the software tab, and you'll find the new initial settings tool software, which will allow you to configure the new central controller.
That is absolutely correct. So the connection tab has just the IP addresses of your central controllers, right? And remember, we can do up to 400 units, so that's 8 central controllers. So if I go to my control target, I've got those 9 controllers that I threw together. And I see System Manager for no billing. It's already got 1 through 9. So that is my master controller. And then for the web display, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, because I could do up to 40 central controllers for ICCW. And then the LCD display, I can pick any of the 8 that I want. Right? So I can do 8, or I can skip that one and do 9. Doesn't matter. But what I can't do is have 9 on a touchscreen display.
Makes sense.
And so what I've done, or what you can do in your site, is if you've got different sections of the building, just show the central controllers on that are appropriate to that area on that touchscreen. So in Swanee, we've got the main office, and then we've got the SDC office kind of in their own. So because our facilities team manages everything, they've got all 6 controllers, but the team in the SDC only have those 2. So they can't change the set points in the break room. But I can configure all of these independently. So this is, very similar screen to what you're used to seeing, but we've added that CN6. So not in use or refrigerant leak error output is how we turn on that CN6. Refrigerant buzzer settings, so I can turn that off. So that answers the question from earlier, Paul. Thanks for making me look like an idiot.
It was easy to do, man.
And then the Modbus connection is if you're doing a power meter.
So just to reiterate, because you brought it back up. So the output for that CN6 is 12 to 24 volts DC.
Yes, and it uses the same wiring harness that you use for CN5. It's the PAC YG10HA.
Perfect. So that would go to a relay to actually initiate some sort of alarming, whether it was audible, visible, or otherwise.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Anything that you can activate with a digital signal, you can do that here. So
cool.
One of the things that's different is you can actually configure what data is displayed on the tile. So here we've got air conditioner. I can choose room temp, humidity, if I've got a smart ME controller, set temp, fan speed, air direction. Any of those can be displayed as what's on the tile itself. Same thing, we've added that outdoor unit. So it will display by default that outdoor temp, the TH7. So let me pull up my initial settings or ICCW here for the Swanee office.
You're just talking about the outdoor unit display that was added?
That is exactly right. So I made a floor plan on my touchscreen, and because our building is now 14 years old, we're starting to have some service issues that have popped up. And so if I go to my roof floor plan, I'm actually showing.
That's cool.
I grabbed a picture of the building out of Google Earth.
Yeah, that's what it looked like. I was going to ask.
Right. And so that's the entire Swanee roof. And then I put the icons next to the units. So when you've got an alarm, when you've got a system down, you actually see it on the floor plan. And the service guys who've been out working on our units have appreciated this. So it's nice. I don't need to know, well, which address 51, and go open a bunch of, I sure hope they labeled it appropriately. And now I can actually see what unit is where. Right. So when you walk in over the training center, we've got heat pump 1, heat pump 2 covers the actual city multi-classroom. If you've been to the Swanee training offices, Blanca sits right here under heat pump 5. So yeah, it's a nice addition to the floor plan.
Yeah, that's very nice to have, because we've mentioned this before, but I'm not the only one who's fixed the wrong unit.
Yeah.
And that's half the battle, is figuring out which unit it is. If it's your first time there, you'll spend the first half hour just trying to figure out which one it is.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's like a lot more customization options as far as what you actually want to look at, what you want to view, and then expanding what you can view. So there's a lot of great additions to the ICCW, which I think overall was underutilized. So it makes a better case for getting familiar with ICCW on your job sites. You have the ability to remote monitor maintenance tool data, plot it on an Excel spreadsheet. Now you can also add outdoor unit floor plans. It doesn't have to be a GIF file. So there's a ton of upgrades that I think will make a huge difference.
Yeah. So here I've got every single unit, every single outdoor unit, every single thing in the Swanee office that's connected to MNet is now available in this list. So I've got on-off status, I've got error status, the mode, I've got some single set point, some dual set point, fan speed, air direction. I can see that this is, the schedule is locked. It's in hold mode because it's IDF room. And I scroll down, I can see the status of my ERVs, my LOSNA units. We've got a hydronic unit making hot water for the training into the building. And then here's that data for the outdoor units. So the instantaneous power, the COP, energy consumption, those are all internal values as reported by the outdoor unit itself. So AHC status, I can see if I've got AHCs in the building, what the CO2 reading is, room humidity. Anyway, so that's a quick tour through the ICCW. So for display settings, for the energy management, I can take a look at the training lobby, and I can look at the thermo on time total. I'll look at the room temp. But while I'm at it, I can also look at the the fan operation time, or I can look at the set temp. And I can see, set temp versus room temp, how many minutes it was running per 30 minutes. Or I can go back and change that to, a day-date comparison. So same unit, different days. That's all built into the controller itself. If you've got energy apportionment, you can actually see the energy consumption and compare that to the space conditions. So all of that is built into the central controller. Scheduling in central controller, it's the same as it's always been, right? So we can see that the lobby has schedule for today, and then this is the weekly schedule. So we come on and optimize start at 5:30 in the morning, and we set everything back at 7:30 in the evening. And just let the system run, but try and maintain that, comfort envelope.
Now, when you set up the schedule, is that originally configured through initial settings tool, or is that after?
I do it right here in the ICCW, but you can
Okay.
also do exactly the same thing from the touchscreen.
Gotcha.
So the ICCW interface is identical now to the touchscreen.
Perfect.
That's huge because let me just say, it wasn't the easiest thing to do on the touchscreen before. It was easy, but it was just a lot of touching.
So yeah, I get that complaint a lot. Nothing. All right. Sorry. Yeah. So, I can look at the unit error logs, system abnormality capacity, they've been working on this heat pump 5 on the roof for a while now. Active error list, we can see that we've got 3602 damper position abnormality in the lost net units. Again, the building is getting pretty long in the tooth. But that is the errors. Another thing to note, and I know that this is not the most focused podcast, and I apologize for that. This should be lots of fun to edit. One of the things that's very important and different with the AE-C400 versus the older generation of controllers is that the time is incredibly important. And if there's a time discrepancy between your master and any of the expansion controllers, because of the secure communication, to prevent spoofing, it will not communicate. So when you change your time, make sure that you're changing it on all of your central controllers the same time, or you'll have to go in and change all of them individually to agree. Otherwise, they won't communicate and you'll actually get an error. So the correct way to do that is you go into the initial settings menu, and you're going to select all of your controllers at the same time.
Okay.
And this will change all of them at once. And if you mess up, it's okay. Just go in and change them individually, and they'll sync back up. But this is something that I know that the TSAs have seen some calls on recently, and they weren't aware of how to fix it. If you're on a corporate network, there is a very good chance that there is an NTP server. So NTP is a network time protocol, and you're not going to have it in like a home network or even a fancy residence that's got 3-phase city multi. But in a corporate network, chances are good that you've got an NTP server. And so what this will do is it will automatically force the controllers to sync back and forth with that server, and it'll keep them from drifting. It'll keep it from communication errors. So time is a big issue. So anyway, this is the login for the functions. So your temperature set point, your ranges, etc. The initial settings for license, night sub mode, peak cut, email alarms. Those are all now under the maintenance menu. And
so just out of curiosity, if I was a technician and I wanted to, I had to maybe correct some issues with a central controller, I replaced one and I wanted to sync up the time. I think one of the questions I get a lot is, what is the easiest or least painful way to get on the network so that I can start using ICCW? Is it going to be something where reaching out to the IT department is going to be required, or is there a quicker way to do it? I mean, what would be your recommendation as far as technician unfamiliar with a job site but wants to get on ICCW? What would be his quickest path?
Yeah, so if it's a single controller, you can disconnect it and just connect directly.
Okay.
But if it's a corporate network, you almost certainly have to have the help of the IT department.
Okay.
Most networks won't allow you to plug in and pull an IP address unless that computer is associated with the Active Directory. which is an IT function. So even when we add central controllers to our corporate network, we have to give the IT department the MAC address, which is the machine address of the network card. It's a hexadecimal code. And then they give us a static IP address. So that has to be whitelisted by the IT department before even the central controllers can go on the network.
Okay. So it wouldn't be as simple as, oh, get me on the Wi-Fi for your network.
I mean, if they'll let you do it, then that's all you need. But
Okay.
generally, you've got to have some help to even get to that point.
So somebody's got to approve some clearance for you to even be able to do that if that was the route they wanted to take.
Yes.
Okay.
Another question that's come up a couple of times, and this is, coming to the end of the new stuff, is how do you do firmware updates? So currently, the latest firmware version as of March 31st, 2026 is version 1.6. And so with the A200, we had a software update tool where you could upload firmware to a bunch of them at the same time. Now you do it through the web browser. So I can open several different windows and do them all at once, and it's effectively the same thing. But it's literally the IP address /SW update.
Okay.
You enter your username and password, you choose your firmware file location, and then you start the update, and it will tell you with some interesting translation choices that it's progressing. Do not turn off the controller absolutely, and then it'll let you know that the firmware has been successfully updated. So relatively painless, pretty straightforward, but it's a little bit different than the way that it was done previously.
And the software updates are still going to be uploaded to Mitsubishi Pro, or?
Yes.
Okay. So that was where we were doing it before. Just want to make sure if they go to the AE-400, they should be able to get the most recent software update on Mitsubishi Pro.
That is correct.
Awesome.
All right.
And the last thing I want to talk about is the accessories. So the accessories that we had for the AE200, we also have for the AE-C400. So the electrical, the junction box for in-wall installation used to be the PAC YG84. Now it's the PAC YK94. Obviously, you don't need to remember that, but we can look up the model number and find that. It's an updated part number. Same thing if you're going to mount it on perf panel, inside of a panel, or you're going to mount it on a den rail. That is a separate kit that you have to have. That's the PAC YK96 TK. And then the plastic enclosure for surface mounting is now the PAC YK92 TB.
All right.
And then the new part, which is the rip and replace, if you're going to mount the AE-C400 where an AE200 was previously installed, the brand new part number is the PAC YK91RF-J. And so literally it's a ring that goes in to the hole and makes your screw holes line up, and it offsets the controller about 35 millimeters from the wall. So anyway, so that's the turbo version of the new central controllers, and there will be a quiz.
All right. Well, first thing you have to do is wake up Rob so you can take his quiz.
I was getting worried about him there for a minute.
Yeah, I was watching you having a blood sugar crash or something.
Yeah, something. I mean,
I'm going to let you guys finish. I got to jump out real quick to move my vehicle, apparently. But thank you, Ed. I appreciate it very much. Lots of good information. Let's get together and make some e-learnings so that we don't have to listen to the hour and 10-minute podcast.
It's the worst podcast ever recorded.
Oh, no, you
I loved it. It was great.
You haven't been listening.
Metis Training Network. You want to head there on YouTube if you want to see the video version of this and know what we were just talking about. Some of the stuff is kind of We need visuals, and yeah, so definitely check out the video version of this.
And then, and we'll be putting on an e-learning probably in the next 45 to 60 days. We've got a list of e-learnings we're working on now, so we'll add this to that extensive list, and we'll get it out there just to help everybody out.
Yeah, it'll hopefully be in smaller, more digestible, bite-sized pieces.
Yes, it definitely will. Real short, sweet, and to the point. And I think that brings us to the end. Bryn had to go move his car because apparently there's a goose in the Swanee parking lot that came back. I thought these things are supposed to migrate.
Oh no,
no, this one decided to stay there.
Last year, it attacked somebody in the warehouse.
Yeah, but it lays its eggs there, makes a nest, and lays its eggs and races those little baby gooses. What do you call a baby goose? A gosling?
Jesus.
It's a gosling.